Welcome inside Black and Gold. Steve Geller, Jeff Nowak on a 7-game losing skid / coachless edition of the program. Saints moving on from Dennis Allen, and now you have Darren Rizzi taking over in the interim. So not really no head coach.
There's a head coach. Yeah.
Yeah, you just don't have someone in place for the future. Or maybe Riz is that guy. Who knows?
He gone. That's so we're gonna go with man. Oh, that explains it. I had the YouTube stream open in the background. I was like, why is my computer crashing? That's why. But no, man, we talked about this going in. A loss to the Panthers and tear it all down, burn it to the ground. Like, you can't come back from that. And I'm just going to say this right now. We don't really have an agenda here. Usually we'll sit and come up with a plan. What are we going to talk about? How are we going to break this down? In this case, I think we just talk for however long we talk for, take a break, talk for however long we talk for again, take another break, and then go into the mailbag and hit on some questions, because that's really all we need to talk about. Is Dennis Allen is fired. Darren Rizzi is the interim head coach. And we've talked about this before. He was the obvious option for a couple reasons. One, because, hey, you're talking about a guy who's been here for 5 years at this point. I think he started in 2019 under Sean Payton. He's also a special teams coordinator, and going with the special teams coordinator as the interim is the common sense play, because he has relationships with both sides of the ball, with everyone on the roster. And the main goal in this scenario is not, hey, we're going to go on an 8-game winning streak, we're going to make the playoffs, we're going to fix it all, we're going to be perfect. It's, how can we prevent this from coming completely unglued? How can we prevent this from the team fracturing and chewing on the walls and just tearing it all down, right? Like, how can we prevent that? Darren Rizzi gives you the best chance to do that. And we'll hear from Darren in this episode. But man, as much as I was like, hey, they really have to fire the head coach, as much as I was like, they really don't have another option, it has to happen, I still didn't necessarily believe it was going to happen until it happened. Like, I was still kind of sitting there this morning like, are they really going to fire the coach? Like, they've had so many opportunities. It's like a bad relationship where it's like it kind of goes in waves, and when it's at that bottom point, you can break through and you can end it and you can just get away clean. But if you wait too long, then it kind of goes back up again. You're like, well, now if I break it off, I'm just a jerk. I think that's what happened last season, right? Like, you had that moment where you could have been like, we're done. This is not working. But then it kind of came back up and you're like, oh, wow, okay, well, maybe we can work this thing out. It didn't work out. It only got worse. And then that peak really just hit the ground into a valley that is completely through the floor. But we're here, man.
I'm interested to see and hear more of the power of Saints Nation, because they got Spencer Rattler to start this year. You got Dennis Allen fired. What else is next, Black and Gold? Come on.
Wait, we're giving the fans credit from starting Spencer Rattler.
I feel like they willed into existence. They willed that into existence.
Yeah, they spoke an oblique injury into existence.
And it happened, right? Yeah, it's like, all right, I shall
put it in the universe, and it came down with it.
And then somehow he leaped ahead of Hainer, but until it was time to go back to being a backup, and then he was a third string. So I still don't understand that mess too.
I mean, I understand it. It's just what they did. Like, it's this is what I thought was going to happen when they drafted him. But either way, we're not talking about Rattler, because even Darren Rizzi, he had the opportunity to kind of slow play it, and he almost did. He kind of did for a second. He was like, we haven't had any personal conversations yet. This has been a whirlwind. We're going to figure some of this stuff out. And then he kind of got pressed on a little more, and he was like, Derek Carr's going to be our quarterback. And he should be. Like, nothing you saw in that 3-week stretch will make you believe. And we didn't have our typical post-game pod. I thought that Derek struggled in that game, but even struggling, he was a far better option than what you had seen the previous 3 weeks. Like, that's why, from a performance perspective, it's like he was exactly fine. Like, he wasn't good, but he wasn't terrible. And I have been desensitized to terrible. Like, my brain has been set to terrible. So I watched like this scuffling offense against one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And I was like, it's not that bad. Like we scored. We actually got points. That just shows how bad it was. It just kind of underscores like how ugly things had gotten. And you really saw it. Like the players, they're gonna say their lines, they're gonna give you the oh, okay, or I'll keep chopping wood, and even that became kind of a running joke. But they're gonna give you, oh, we're bought in, man. I bleed black and gold, whatever. But it's like even when they're saying it, you can kind of see behind their eyes. It was like they don't mean this. Like it doesn't. It's not resonating. It is not landing the way that it would if you believed it. And that to me was the biggest tragedy of the Dennis Allen era. The biggest failure of the Dennis Allen era is just reading the room and understanding how to be a person with human emotions and understanding how you need to approach certain situations, like how you can it. Like every time I heard DA talk throughout his entire coaching tenure, it kind of felt like I was talking to an AI chatbot that was just responding based on a series of ones and zeros. And it was like, this is how a human would respond to this. So this is what I'm going to say. And that's why listening to Darren Rizzi today was so kind of, wow, this is a guy who understands like why he's saying the things he's saying. And like when he says stuff, I believe it. Anyway, I know I'm rambling here, but this has been so long coming, and it feels like kind of a weight has been lifted of like, this was not getting better. It was not going to get better. And I don't think this is going to make it better. You might win a game. You might get that kind of interim coach bump, or, guys kind of have that boost of energy. Then you're going to kind of fall back down. Like, I think there's still a lot of serious problems with this team, but this move today at least kind of creates the vision for how you cycle back and how you kind of reset the deck and find ways to improve and find ways to rebuild your roster and find a path forward that, as long as you were staying with the status quo, you could not see. There was no path ahead. And I don't know, I feel like you can at least chart that path now.
The biggest issue too with what we were seeing, besides just 7 straight losses with this squad, you just saw so much regression with the defense, and that was Allen's obviously calling card as the head coach / really defensive coordinator. That's how we know he's cut his teeth in this league, and I'm sure he'll go on to probably do that somewhere. But for whatever reason, this season, just as a whole, that unit, there's been hard to see any positive except maybe takeaways that they've been able to generate.
Yeah, and you're just agreeing with Tyrann Mathieu here, because that's basically what Tyrann Mathieu said. It's like, if you are on the defense, you should feel responsible for getting your head coach fired.
Right.
And it's just kind of Tyrann talking about that today.
I mean, it's tough, man. I think anytime you lose as many games as we lost in a row, I mean, a lot of questions have to get answered. Things have to change. But like I told the defensive back unit, man, if you don't feel bad, like something's probably wrong with you. I absolutely believe that, defensively, we played probably the biggest role in, him getting fired. To go from a really good defense to a defense that's really kind of unrecognizable. You know what I mean? Like, as far as our standard goes, yeah, man, like that's tough. And I think we defensively played the biggest role, with the way we played, the way we didn't close out games. Tackling has kind of been an issue for us really all season. I felt like we were able to take the ball away. We just didn't really capitalize on it too often, So I think defensively, man, like we probably played a bigger role, in him not being here anymore.
And it's hard to disagree with that, because here's the thing. If you were out there struggling to score points, but your defense was dominating and keeping you in games, and you were losing because, you didn't have a starting quarterback and you felt like that was the only thing holding you back, then DA probably still has a job, because that means his message is still resonating. That means his plans are still working. That means people are still taking him seriously. It started to feel like, and you hear this, they'd say like, we're playing for each other, that whole like, it's kind of coded messaging, but like players don't want to put out bad tape. Even if they don't believe in the head coach, they're going to still go out there and play hard, but you can see it. You can feel it. You can sense it when the team is going out there waiting to be beat, waiting to see how they're going to find a way to lose today. And that's what that was in that game. Like, I don't know if it's possible for you to have dominated that game more than you did, and you still lost it.
Those post-game stats are unreal.
They don't make sense. And we don't even have to go through them. Like, one of the best things about what happened today is we don't have to like talk about that game at all, because it's like it happened in the shadow realm to a different team in a different universe. Right?
The Men in Black mind eraser, please.
And all you can do is move forward from it.
Something about playing the Panthers.
Hey, all I can say is like this had to happen. And it was inevitable. Like, you could feel it. Like, once you got to like 5-6 losses, the only question in my mind was, can you find a way to drag this out to the end of the season so that you don't have to deal with the chaos of an interim head coach and trying to figure all that out? And a win over the Panthers may have done that, or may have like gotten you to the point where you could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Because 8 games a long time to be under an interim head coach, man. Like, you don't want to give half your season to an interim head coach. Thankfully, the Saints have someone in-house that has that level of institutional familiarity.
He had that Riz.
And Darren Rizzi, and we'll hear a quote from him in a minute here. And Darren Rizzi is that guy. Like, I think if you didn't have Darren, if you had a first-year special teams coordinator and you're looking at who do we make our interim head coach? Is it Joe Woods? Is it Clint Kubiak? These first-year guys, second-year guy? That would have been a much harder decision to make. And I think that Mickey didn't want to make it. I think he had his hand forced a little bit. And you could see it in his announcement of the firing, talking about an avalanche of injuries. Like, you're firing the guy. Just say thanks, go away. He's out there saying like, he never made excuses, so I'm going to make them for him. Like, this isn't the time. Read the room. It's over. But I don't know.
I think the sentiment obviously is that DA is a good dude, and it's kind of hard to let go of somebody that's a good person, but this is business, right?
Right, and he is. Like, I don't dislike, like, that's the thing. Like, people want to trash DA, and like, you can trash him as a coach, you can trash the track record, but he's not a bad guy. He's not an asshole. Like Sean was genuinely just not a nice person. And a lot of head coaches aren't like good people. That doesn't mean they're good head coaches if you're a nice person, but it does make you like you're going to look back at this tenure and like, that really sucked. But it also shouldn't color what he was able to do for this team. And Tyron talked about that too. Like, remember where this team was in 2015? Remember how bad that defense was? Like, the fact that you were able to create a scenario that Drew Brees was, even remotely close to a Super Bowl at the end of his career, and you can argue it got robbed from him. The defense that was reasonable, that was competitive. And he was a big part of that. Like, I've had people today tell me, like, because I think in a couple years, we're going to be talking about Dennis Allen being the defensive coordinator of a Super Bowl contender, maybe the Lions, because Aaron Glenn's probably going to get a head coaching job, whether it's here or not, I don't know. But either way, like, we're going to be talking about Dennis Allen being like, what a great defensive coordinator he is. We're going to be talking about him in the same sentence as a Steve Spagnuolo. I genuinely believe that. And people are like, they have nothing in common. Well, first of all, the schemes are the same. Like you look at what Spags is doing out in Kansas City. There's a reason the Saints keep taking Chiefs defensive players. The schemes are very similar. And also, like, Spags was a terrible head coach, but he is a great defensive coordinator. And I think you're going to see that. Like, I don't know how long it's going to take DA to land a job like that, but it's going to happen. And people are just so angry right now that they're forgetting, like, the fact that he had that job in the first place was because they didn't want to lose him as a defensive coordinator, because he would have left. And was that the right call? Probably not, obviously, hindsight. But at the same time, like, I am genuinely worried for what happens to this defense over the next several years, because you could just as easily go back to the nightmare scenarios that you had in the 2015s.
I'm not concerned, but I'm curious to find out what's going to really happen now with the trade deadline, just like knocking at the door. And do you become serious sellers now and just kind of really do hit that reset button for whoever else you have coming in?
Yeah, we could talk about that a little bit more, but like I think Marshawn is the only player that I look at and like, as long as a team is willing to look past the injuries and convince themselves that like, oh, this is not a significant injury and maybe he is just quitting on the team. But then you're like, is that the guy we want? Do we want a guy that's not playing through injuries and doesn't seem committed? So like, are you going to get an offer that's worthwhile?
Right, I hear you.
I think to me, Marshawn is the player that gets traded, but I don't think you're going to get a lot for him. The funny thing is, Alvin is probably the best in terms of what a team would be trading for. In terms of like, okay, what is worth a team giving up assets to go get, and who is the player that you could actually fetch enough assets for to make it make sense? It would be Alvin. It'd be the guy who just tied his career high in rushing yards at a 200-yard game. I don't think it's going to happen because like you need someone to watch, like you need a player to watch. But if they did trade Alvin, think about this. He's 11 yards shy of being your franchise rushing leader. Can you imagine if that's how he didn't get it? Because they fired that coach and then we're like, let's trade him.
Right. He's our biggest asset. What can we get?
I kind of feel like Alvin would retire if they tried to trade him.
What if it was to Denver?
You think Alvin wants to go live in Denver?
Yeah.
No, he does not.
I think it seems like a good time. Sean's out there.
Cold, man. It's cold. He's a southern man. He does not want to go live in Denver and breathe that thin air. No, it's people like think Alvin's a guy who wants to ring chase. Alvin, to me, it's like if Alvin didn't feel like he wanted to play football tomorrow, he would just retire. I don't think the ring is what's gonna do it for him.
Well, for me, it's more of obviously the Peyton effect.
I don't see that because I just think like I think if they tried to trade him, he would retire. I genuinely do. And so I don't know. Like
I'm going to NASCAR.
Yeah, he's got so many irons on fire. Like he plays football because there's certain people who play football because they're just obsessed with football. They're gym rats and they just need it. Alvin plays football because he's elite at it. I don't think because like it's like his whole being the way it is for some guys. But either way, like I don't know. I don't see them being active at the trade deadline, particularly in large part because I just don't think they have the pieces that will bring an offer worth trading for, worth making the move.
Maybe Alante.
I'm not trading Alante. Alante's like one of the,
I'm
build it all out of Alante.
What teams might be looking for?
Yeah, but I'm not trading Alante.
Well, I mean, depends on what you're getting.
No, it doesn't, because the offer's not going to be there. You're not getting premium offers at the trade deadline. You're getting, hey, do you want to move on from this guy offers? Like you're getting, do you really want to deal with Marshawn anymore offers? You're not getting 2 first-round picks or a first and a second or anything like that. You're getting bargain bin offers.
What if the Arizona comes calling for Cam Jordan?
You just fired your head coach. Which of these players were the head coach's player offers? Yeah, I mean, no one's coming for Cam Jordan. Not on that contract. No one's coming for DeMario on that contract. No one's coming for Tyron on that contract. So I don't see it. The funny thing is, and I said this before, Chase Young is the guy that if a team
I could see him being moved.
If a team was like, we need pass rush help.
What's out there on the cheap?
Yeah, and this is not going to blow out your salary cap any worse than it already is.
Yeah,
you can get a 4th rounder. I'd probably do it
for sure. I'm definitely in the mode now where I am ready to just reset it, clean house, see what you can get for whatever, and then I don't know. Then you go through obviously the interview process of rebuilding back with head coach and see what he wants to do.
Yeah, and to me the rest of this season. And we'll talk more about Darren's philosophy and why I think Darren is a really good person to be leading this room right now, or leading this group right now in this exact situation. It's about finding out what you have in certain players. And the funny thing is, you're talking, like you'll ask Darren about like, hey, how do you evaluate for the future? How do you look at that? He's not going to do that. He's looking at this 8 games because this is the only 8 games he's guaranteed. So he's going to be like, hey, I need to put my best foot forward so maybe I can get a head coaching job, because I'm not even guaranteed to stay on as the special teams coordinator next year.
Absolutely.
Because, a new coach, you bring in, say, Bill Belichick.
I got my guy.
Just for an example, like, you think he's going with your special teams? No, he's bringing in his guy. And like, you have to commit to, like, if you're trying to hire a head coach and that head coach that you want says, no, I know who I want. I know my guy. I'm bringing my guy. You have no leg to stand on. You can't be like, oh, but we really like this guy. You'd be like, he's
all right. Bye.
Fine. Bye. I don't know if you're talking about Vrabel, you're talking about Belichick, you're talking about Gruden. It's like you're
rumblings with him having been an advisor for this squad for sure.
Yeah. The team just isn't going to have the leverage in that situation. So if I'm Darren Rizzi, I'm like, I got to go out and show this. And he's been in an interim situation before. He's never been the interim head coach, as far as I can tell. Like, Dan Campbell was his head coach in Miami when Joe Philbin got fired. I can't recall who the other one was. Tony Sperano got fired, and it was Todd Bowles. Who was the interim head coach. So like, he knows what it's like to deal with an interim, but not necessarily be the leader. And the interesting thing too is you look at Foster Moreau, and he's a guy who actually has experience in both college and the NFL dealing with interim head coaches, and in both instances it went very well. Ed Ogeron, obviously at LSU, ended up getting hired into that job, went on to win a national championship. And with the Raiders, Derek Carr was on that team. That was 2020. John Gruden stepped down because of the whole email scandal thing. And Rick Bisaccia took over, special teams coordinator. And they went on. I think they won their last 5 games. They made the playoffs. They lost to the Bengals in the first round. Bengals went to the Super Bowl that year. So, like, there's some understanding of what this process is like. And we'll see how it goes.
I thought it was kind of interesting. Rizzi brought up the fact that, special teams coordinators, they had that interaction with both sides of the football. So it's kind of a little bit of an advantage to him that he has relationships with most of these guys, I would think, if not all of them already.
Yeah, that's why you go with a special teams coordinator, right? Like that's why it makes sense. Like if you're asking Clint Kubiak to take over, suddenly your offensive coordinator is dealing with the defense after half a season of only focusing on the offense. That's a tougher situation. It's tough for anybody. Like, let's be real. Like, these are not easy situations to deal with. Like, it's a whirlwind. Like he didn't know. It's not like you went into last week thinking like, hey, I might be the head coach on Monday. Like, no, you found this out this morning, and maybe last night if you got a heads up that's like, okay, this is coming down the pike. But like this firing officially happened this morning. So like all day today, you're like scrambling. You're having team meetings. You're trying to, assure your players that they're in a good way. You're trying to meet with all the staff that you don't deal with on a regular basis. Being a head coach is a lot.
One thing you mentioned, Dan Campbell, I just want to bring up. A lot of folks are saying, oh, he's like the coach that got away. Sean was still running the show when Campbell left for Detroit. So it's not like, there was that you missed him because you hired Dennis Allen instead kind of thing.
Yeah. The question I have that I don't necessarily know the answer to is like, if you had committed to Dan Campbell after Sean Payton, but you don't know you didn't know at the time how long Sean was going to coach for. I guess the question would be if Dan Campbell was here in 21.
I got you. Right. Yeah. Would he have gotten it over Dennis?
Who would you have picked? And I'm not convinced they would have gone with Dan Campbell. I think they probably still would have gone with Dennis Allen, just because it's like, what is Dan's technical job? Like, he was the tight ends coach?
And I think he was the assistant head coach.
He was, but like, he's a unique kind of head coach. Because normally, like, oh, is he a defensive head coach? Is he an offensive head coach? is he a special teams head coach? Like Dan is like kind of just a vibes head coach. And I'm not, don't say that to be negative. Like he doesn't call, he never called plays on offense. He never called plays on defense. But he's an excellent head coach. So you can do it in a lot of ways. You know, John Harbaugh, special teams coordinator. Just kind of an interesting dynamic of like what makes a good head coach. And, you know, usually you'll see offense and there's some good reasons for offense, but yeah.
Sean definitely obviously saw it in him after being just the interim head coach with the Dolphins, bringing him on board with the Saints. And then obviously now, I mean, obviously Detroit's like the most electric team in the NFC at this moment.
Right. Yeah. Dan was the tight ends coach for 4 years. So like that was his role. You don't see a lot of tight ends coaches ascending to a head coach role. Like that doesn't happen very often. And obviously the assistant head coach thing, the fact that he had been an interim, but that's why this is a big deal for Darren, because, you know, one of the reasons as a tight ends coach, you're able to parlay that into a job is that interim season that you took, or the portion of that season that you coach as an interim, that, you know, you can say, hey, this went well. I understand how to do it. Give me an opportunity. They gave him an opportunity, and he took advantage of it.
And he wants it. He's interviewed for head coaching gigs before.
He interviewed for the Saints head coaching gig when they gave it to Dennis Allen. But yeah, no, and I don't know how the rest of the season is going to go. They could lose the next 8 games, but that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, right? So you kind of feel like, hey, I'd like to see some positivity. I kind of feel like at some point, and you know, I feel like you'll give Derek Carr a couple more games if you win those games, and you can get on a winning streak, which I don't see happening, but you get on a winning streak, then I think you stick it out. If not, I kind of feel like you have to go to the rookie again.
Did you see that stat that Derek Carr is now the only quarterback to get his head coach fired twice with 2 different teams?
He's also the only quarterback in NFL history to lose to 31 different NFL teams.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like
who's just left on his list?
The Raiders.
Saints? Oh, the Raiders, duh.
Yeah, the Saints shut him out. It's only the Raiders because he played for him for 11 years, 10 years, 9 years, whatever it was. What they should do is, even if they end up benching Derek to give the young guy a shot to kind of get another few games under his belt, they should let him start against the Raiders just to see what happens.
He can get the final Infinity Stone.
Yeah, might as well make it an even 32. Who wants 31? Put that record, run away with that record and hide.
Yeah, the Carr family has had some rough records over the years.
Dude, the funny thing is, there is a player. So there's 9 other players I want to say that have lost to 30 different NFL teams. Drew Brees is on that list. So it's like it's not necessarily these guys must be terrible. Part of it is just a longevity thing. Like if you play in the NFL long enough, you're going to rack up losses to a lot of different teams.
And if you're with obviously one organization for a good amount of time, and then you spend, the other half there with like Drew had obviously from Chargers to Saints,
right?
There's a good amount of opponents in there that are different that you played a lot. So
I think one of the teams that did the Saints beat Drew when he was there. I can't recall. But I don't know if Drew is on that list. Either way, it's a whole thing, and I'm again, it's like I don't like the idea of celebrating that a guy had the worst day of his working life. Like that sucks, at the same time, I think it's a positive thing what happened today. It had to happen for this organization to move forward, and DA is going to land on his feet. And at the end of the day, and this is a bit the last thing I say about it, like the take that I have agreed with throughout this whole process. Dennis Allen is an excellent defensive coordinator. He's not a good head coach. And that's just the fact of how some people like Steve Spagnuolo. That's one of the reasons.
Percentage.
I'm sorry?
The 3rd worst winning percentage of all time.
Yeah, and I mean, like it's became clear, and you gave him a fair shot, and that's why I can't be mad at the Saints not firing him after a 9-8 season. Like I think you earned that, and you kind of when you hire a head coach and you give him a 3-year contract, going 9-8 in year 2, like I can't be mad that they gave him that shot. But at a certain point this season, it became very, very clear that that shot was not going to turn into something good. And I don't care how many names you write down on an index card, how many sticks of gum you decide to chew, it's not going to change. And so whether it happened in week 9, whether it happened in week 18, whether it happened, in January or February, it was going to happen. And at least now we can move forward knowing that, because I think that was the fear for a lot of Saints fans. They needed it to happen now because in their head, if it didn't happen now, it wasn't going to happen. And I kind of felt like it's going to happen either way. That's why I didn't get too worked up about it. But it's here, it's over. Now we can start to talk about how do you build this thing back up as opposed to look how fast it got torn down.
I thought it was going to be the old, win a couple, lose some, turn around, win some, lose some. Obviously, the lose some is just stuck of late, and that was ultimately definitely the death blow for him. I didn't think it was going to happen this season either, but I agree. I was like, at the end of the year, they'll make the swap. They'll make the move somehow.
I don't think Mickey wanted to. I genuinely don't. I think he got his hand forced by the fact that you just had one of the worst losses in team history to one of the worst teams you'll ever play.
To the Carolina Panthers, when you outgained them, outplayed them, and then still somehow you won the turnover battle, you won time of possession, you won yards.
You didn't just win, you dominated. Like if it was close, you'd be like, yeah, okay, 350 to 340, like whatever, you won, but you won by 150 yards. You won by 10 minutes in time of possession. The best part was Lonnie Johnson. Remember Lonnie?
Yes, yeah.
Going on Twitter and having arguments like, who's the worst now? I'm like, so you're celebrating being the second worst?
Yeah. Did you see Colin Saunders responded to him?
Yeah, I did. And it's like, we're embarrassed by what just happened. You should be too.
Right.
But that was the funniest part is Panthers fans trying to dunk and be like, guys, like we're down bad, but y'all have lived down bad for years.
they needed their moment.
I can't be mad at him. It's just funny. Like, Lonnie, I don't think you're making the point you think you're making. But all right. Well, let's wrap this segment up. We'll come back. We'll hear from Darren Rizzi. I know I promised that already, but we just kind of got on a tangent. We're going to hear quotes from Darren Rizzi's press conference, which I enjoyed. I thought he did a good job. We'll come back in the final segment, do a mailbag. This is Inside Black and Gold, kind of a weird edition. We're not doing our 3 up, 3 down. That is on the site. That is on WWL. I did write it. So if you're craving to find out how I possibly found 3 positives to talk about, it was tough in that game. You can go check it out at WWL.com, but I'm not going to force you to sit through it here.
Well, I'm going to guess that Alvin was leader of the positives.
I can tell you right now, Alvin, Alante, and Blake Groupie.
Okay.
Who is quietly had a very, very good year, albeit with that one missed PAT. And he's 16-17, 94% makes on field goals. That's what I asked him to do. He did it. So he's one of them. Anyway, but yeah, I'll build it all out of Alante Taylor's. Give me as much Alvin Kamara as I can get. Let him take that record and run away and hide with it. And we'll do all the rest. But all right, Inside Black and Gold, Jeff Nowak, Steve Geller. It's a new era, everybody. Stick around.
I'm an accountability guy. Our motto on special teams since I took over has been 1/11th, and that's all about accountability. It's every person, knowing their part, understanding their part, knowing their role, understanding their role, and going out and executing it. And as I said to the team this morning, that 1/11th philosophy is going to be something that we carry, because in no other sport can one person have an error and it affects the other people on the. I gave a baseball analogy, I gave a basketball analogy. In baseball, Aaron Judge can go 0 for 4 and strike out 4 times, but Garrett Cole throws a perfect game, the Yankees are still going to win. LeBron can drop 60, J.R. Smith can go 2 for 21 like he normally did, and LeBron could LeBron could, they're still going to win. So, my point is that can't happen in football. In football, one guy messes up on one play, it affects the other 10. And so I think that's one of the areas we can improve in. I think we can be more accountable. I'm always an accountability guy. I'm a keep it real guy, like I said. I'm going to tell you how I see it. Not a lot of secrets with me. I think that players like that. I think players respond to that. I think it's one of my strengths. Like I said, I think I'm a good leader, and so that's how we're going to kind of keep it rolling.
All right, and we're back on Inside Black and Gold. That was interim head coach Darren Rizzi. I didn't have J.R. Smith catching strays on my bingo card for Darren Rizzi's press conference, but there he is throwing shade at I used to call him Junior Smith. But yeah, it's he's an accountability guy, and if you are of the belief that the accountability was the biggest issue with this Saints squad, and a lot of people might say it was, hopefully that improves. But even just that state, like you when he talks, you at least feel like there's something behind it.
Plus, he sounds like a coach who's been yelling at somebody all day.
Yeah, I did. I think it was Brett Martelli was like, "Oh, hopefully his voice holds up." I worry in week 12 he's going to be sounding like Doc Rivers out there. But no, like Rizzi's got a personality, and I don't know if people are as familiar. Like we talk to Darren every week, so right. I have a good understanding of what Darren's personality is. I don't know if the average Saints fan, like I could be wrong. Maybe people are hanging on every word that the special teams coordinator is saying. I just assume people skip over those videos on the Saints YouTube channel. But he's got, he's a funny guy. He's got a personality, and I think he's going to be a lot more engaging for fans to kind of rally behind, even if this season is lost. Which maybe you're of the belief that 8-game winning streak is coming. He's still it's going to have some entertainment value, I think, the rest of the way.
Yeah, and I think he mentioned in the presser too a little bit about a Hall of Fame coach that he took some wise words from. What do you know? Bill Parcells, another, I guess you could call him a mentor, aka like a Sean Payton. So we got. I feel like he's got that more of aggressive, sarcastic kind of tone and behavior about him that. He's definitely more of a Sean Payton type when it comes to head coach, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, Sean Payton also Bill Parcells tree. So
right, exactly.
From a personality perspective, they do have a lot in common. They're very kind of fiery individuals. They like one thing I'll say for Sean is he didn't know how to do anything but be Sean Payton.
You knew who the damn boss was too.
Exactly. Like he was a lunatic. He was kind of a jerk, but he was Sean, right? And you understood why he was the way he was, and he had a goal and he had a plan. And sometimes that plan was to make your life miserable, but hey, at least he executed it well.
Right.
And like I don't think Darren at its core is as evil genius as Sean Payton, is
Sean.
Is as like evil empire kind of deal as Sean. Like I think Sean wanted to be the villain of his own story. Like Sean, he relished that position of being the heel, right? Not for his own people, not for New Orleans, but for the NFL at large. I think he loved that title. He loved to be the petty guy who kind of got under your skin. And I don't know if that's Darren. Like, I don't think that at his core, he wants to be that. But from a personality perspective of just being real, I do think that you're getting a lot more of that, because one thing I think just graded on people over a period of time is like, you would ask Dennis Allen questions and you would get the same kind of coach speak. Like, I don't think he even appreciated what he was saying after a while. And, and that's the same thing. Like when people get graded on by Derek Carr, it's a lot of that. It's like, do you even what you're saying? Like genuinely, like, are you talking to me, but are you really even listening to yourself? There was just too much of that. And I don't get that sense from Darren. Now, this is a good day for him. Now, as negative as the day is, like he's getting promoted. Like this is a positive result for him in his career. How do things go when it's not going well? How do things go if the Saints lose 3 in a row? I don't know. But right now, I give his opening press conference positive reviews.
Yeah, like you said, like for us, even getting ready for this show when we're doing the pregame, it's like we start gathering our audio together. It's like, what do we want to play? This, and this. And it was never like, oh man, you got to go grab that chunk from Dennis Allen, what he had to say. It was always, kind of passed over. It was never that interesting to us. And we knew we didn't want to present it to the fans to hear again.
No, I mean, unless it was just like trashing Kendra Miller, he didn't really have a ton to say. Like that was like every now and then he would betray some of the reality behind it. But that was like that only served to prove like most of the time he's not doing that. Most of the time you're asking him a question, and that's not necessarily unusual for a coach. My coaches aren't giving you everything. Sean didn't give you everything. Sean was notorious for just being like, I didn't lie to you. I just didn't tell you everything. And so like I'm not going to begrudge a coach that, but there's a point where it starts to feel like it's not genuine, and we reached that at some point.
Even though some of it was BS, though, I feel like you wanted to hear it, and the fans wanted to hear what Sean still had to say.
Yeah, what I think what went for Sean more than anything else is he understood the fan base very well. And he understood what people, not what they wanted to hear. Like he didn't just say things people wanted to hear. He understood how to sell a product to New Orleans, right? He understood what they wanted out of their head coach. And I just don't know if DA ever, like the Falcons game last year was that in a nutshell of like
that was almost the nail in the coffin for him with the fans, I feel like.
Yeah, and like you blew out your arch rival, embarrassed them, and no one talked about that. All they talked about was you apologized to the Falcons?
To these fucking guys, right?
Your team went rogue?
Oh, and I'm sure you saw now too, like that video surfaced, and it's like Rizzi's reaction.
No.
Yeah, there's kind of like a moment where Arthur Smith is going with DA and whatever, he walks off, and then he turns back around because Rizzi says something, and obviously you can't tell what exactly is going on, but he just says something real quick and turns his back and starts heading back to the locker room.
I do vaguely recall that, and yeah, like that's a good example of like, yeah, that's what I want out of my head coach. I want a guy with an edge. I want a guy who's gonna be like, "Fuck me, fuck you."
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't even know why we're yelling.
Fuck me. Fuck you.
We don't get along because we don't get along. It doesn't have to mean anything. Like, just say, well, be better next time. You don't want us to score a touchdown? Don't let us. Now, that was a weird situation because technically it was cheap, but whatever. Like, don't call me Chief, pal. Don't call me pal, Bronco. Bucko. I was going for Bucko. I said Bronco. That's a new.
You got Bronco on the brain.
Dang. Can we start the pod over?
Well, we're starting the season over, Jeff. So why not?
It does kind of feel like an 8-game season. It does. Like, and like the results of this 8-game season aren't going to mean playoffs necessarily, but yeah, the problem is I do think that this coaching change is going to spur a few wins. Now, how many? I'm not sure, but it's going to be enough to ruin any hope of that number 1 overall pick. And that's why like folks are mad they gave DA this last season. I think this season was destined to go off the rails, whether you had an excellent coach or whether you had Dennis Allen in there, because I just don't think the depth was there. And like, yeah, maybe if you had perfect health, which is never the case in the NFL, you would have had a chance. But like, this team needed a reset, and it was always going to be a rough year this year unless everything broke your way. And you kind of, I think you're better off with DA taking the shots on that, right? Like,
right.
Would you have rather had a first year head coach in here dealing with all this and having people kind of jump down his throat? Now, I think the fans would have been a little more lenient because they would have still been mad at Dennis. But like, now you can at least say like, hey, we're going to have however this goes, we're going to have a decent draft pick. We have all of our draft picks. We have not over leveraged ourselves from a salary cap perspective. You're still working back, but you're better off now than you've been in a long time. And as you kind of work through this next year, you should be coming out in 2026 reasonably clean on that front. And so I think that's something you could sell to a coach next year that you would have had a hard time selling to a head coach this year. So,
do you know that offhand, do the Saints have all their picks for next season, for this next draft? Sorry.
I think they might have traded the 7th. I think they have 6.
All right, so nothing extreme.
I think they might have given something up in the trade to go get Kool-Aid. I can't recall exactly.
Yeah, as long as you have obviously those top picks. I mean, you don't want to come into a situation like, well, you got to do this rebuild, but sorry, we don't have a second or fourth for you.
Yeah, I think they have their 1 through 5.
Okay, good.
Because they did give some up in I can't remember exactly what the Kool-Aid trade was, but either way, like you have the picks that matter, right? And you if you make a couple more trades, maybe you add a few picks to that chest. You might get a comp pick or two. I think maybe a 7th round comp pick to add a piece, and you're also going to get some information on guys like Shamar John Charles, right? Like, is he someone that you can say he's a depth corner for us down the road as you kind of work through this projection? Like Alontae Taylor, again, we didn't talk about the up, three down that I put up on the site, but I think Alontae's future is on the outside, and I think he showed you why in that game. I thought he was very good on the outside in that game. Now it would be helpful if you had a non-practice squad corner across from him, so they had to throw his way more often, but pretty much every time Bryce went his way, it went the Saints' way. The only negative I'll give you is he should have had 2 interceptions. And instead, he just kind of got his hand on it and knocked it down. And he would say he should have had 2 interceptions. That's not like you watch him going off the field. And after a PBU that forced a punt, he was like irate with himself because he knew that there should be an interception there. So, like I like what you have in him. I like what you have in some of these young players. And the rest of this season, the mission of this season is going to be exactly what do we have? Like, who are the players that we build through? And we haven't talked about the Chris Olave injury. We haven't talked about Mike Thomas's criticism.
Man, oh man, that was wild.
It was kind of nuts. And it was a bad throw.
Oh yeah,
right?
No doubt.
I mean, I don't know how much of the future Derek Carr is involved in, but you don't really have someone to replace him right now. Like I like Spencer Rattler. We'll see how he develops over the offseason, but what we saw in that 3-game stretch isn't having me racing to the button to put him back in. And we'll see.
That boy needs some more seasoning.
Yeah, I think DA put us a little more time in the oven.
Okay.
And I think that's fair. But yeah, it was not a good throw. My only issue with the everyone piling on the throw, and it wasn't a good throw, is you're absolving by doing that. You are absolving a dirty hit and not talking at all about the guy headhunting because a ball got thrown high. Like, balls get thrown high. Like, it was a bad throw. The guy's coming off an injury. He wasn't sharp all day. Should he have made the throw? I don't know. I don't think it was the wrong read. It's got to be on target. It wasn't. And that ended up putting him in a vulnerable position. And yeah, Derek's got to reckon with that. But at the same time, what the hell is that hit? Like, he's going to get fined for that hit. And so if you got guys headhunting, any bad throw is gonna be a hospital ball. If you look at that, like
this
the
is
one to Juwan Johnson.
This is a guy known for doing this too.
Well, I don't know. I don't even know the player. I couldn't even tell you the player's name. But
let me get it for you.
But no, it was a dirty friggin' hit at the same time. So it's like, yeah, we could talk about the bad throw, but we shouldn't absolve the defensive player. Like, if all the defensive player does there is not go to the head of a guy who doesn't have the ball, then we're having a completely different conversation. So I don't know. Like, maybe don't go headhunting. And they did it to Juwan too. Like, the throw to Juwan wasn't off target. The guy got his hand on it, tipped it up to the air. You know what the defender still did? Speared Juwan Johnson in the helmet. He had to get checked for a concussion. So, if the defenders are going to play recklessly, then yeah, I mean, maybe that does factor into where you're throwing the ball. But I don't know. Mike is just a shit talker, and I cannot endorse just rampant shit talking. Like,
what was wild, obviously, he was one of the biggest advocates for getting Derek to New Orleans at first.
that changed quickly.
That changed
But-
really freaking
But
quick.
at the end of the day, it's like, if you want to fight the guy, go fight the guy. You'd call him. Say, let's go in the parking lot and box or something. Like, but being all tough on Twitter and not saying shit to the guy's face.
Well, that's where all the tough guys hang out.
Well, that's the thing. Like, that's why I can't endorse it. Like, if you want to go meet him somewhere publicly and be like, just cuss him out, I endorse that. Get it all out in the open. But this whole, like, I'm going to go on Twitter during the game and just be a dick. Like, is that like, hate to break it to you, Mike, there's a reason you don't have a job right now. And like, that's part of it. Like, if you don't think that's part of why he is not on an NFL team, you're crazy. And like, I don't even necessarily disagree with him. That was a horse shit ball that needs to be better. You're an 11-year veteran. You can't hang your guy out to dry like that. But again, we are not talking about the player going headhunting. And
David Woods, by the way.
yeah, so I don't know. I that's my take on that. Like, yeah, it was a dog shit pass, and he's got to be better. But there's a universe where the defensive player notices the ball goes 30 feet over his head, and I don't know.
And
Even if he caught it, it would have been a dirty hit. But the fact that he didn't have the ball at all was just like, what the fuck?
you just got to be really concerned for Chris because the guy just came back too.
Yeah, and that's brutal. And we talked all week about the Guardian cap, and it was like, hey, I got this new helmet. It should help. And man,
Yeah.
and I don't know, like that was just crown to crown. Like, I don't even know if it's like, hey, you get concussed a lot, so now you're in that position where you get concussed easier. I don't know
Right.
if that's a factor. I think you're going down on that hit either way, and that's why I don't think we're talking enough about the hit. Because like, even if that ball was on target, if the guy's head hunting,
Right. And I know this guy's dealing with concussions. I'm going to make my move here.
See, I don't even know if it's that. I don't know if he's trying to give a guy a concussion.
I just know the guy's had a history of these.
Sure. I think it's more so, to me, it's like you're playing recklessly. And when you play recklessly, people get hurt. And the same is true when you're throwing reckless passes. So yeah, I didn't mean to get into that, but it is what it is. Like, Derek got to be better, but I'm still not going to endorse just rampant shit talking on social media as like, oh, tell him. Like, you were in a locker room with this dude. Did you tell him then, or did you wait until you got out of the room and then typed it in your phone?
Did we ever get to find out where Cam was running off to after the game?
That was weird, wasn't it? It looked like he was about to walk home.
Yeah, like,
taking my ball and leaving.
We got to go this way, Cam.
That was weird. And like, everyone was confused. Like, Nathan Shepard's like, dude, where are you going?
Right. And there was no like yelling and hollering going on.
No, I think he was so irate at how things were going that he was like, he could not bring himself to go into that locker room immediately. Like, he needed a second. That's kind of what he said. That's what Derek, I think, said.
Kind of like
as they were
sitting in the
walking
car
by.
before you walk in the house. I don't know.
Like, he was like, if I walk in that room right now, I'm going to break some stuff. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
he was like, I need to go for a walk. And they were like, but
Cam,
you can't.
you all right?
Yeah. Either way, this is where we are as a franchise. And
First time I've had to deal with interim head coach in New Orleans since the Sean Payton suspension, obviously.
yeah, and it was obviously a different situation. It was still
Yeah.
not fired. Hey, like it was interim, literal interim, because it's like you are there until he's back.
You're just a placekeeper, right?
Yeah, a placeholder is a better term. Yeah. But here, let's talk about one more thing that Darren said, because I did promise we were here from Darren. This is what he said about like the fans and how he feels like the fans should feel about what they've seen, and I think this is kind of an important, like, this is when I say I believe him when he talks, because I believe him when he says stuff like this.
They should be pissed off. I'm pissed off. The fans should be pissed off. The people in New Orleans, the people of Louisiana, no one should be happy. And I think this city deserves a winner. They know what winning football looks like. And, it's our job to bring that back. And my message is this. Here's what I can't promise a lot. I can promise passion. I can promise fight. And I can tell you that team's going to go out there every Sunday, and that's going to be clear that we're going to have a team that's full of passion and a team that's full of fighters. That I can promise you. Now, the football's got to get better. The execution's got to get better. All right. But we're not going to lack those two things. We're not going to be boring to watch. I can promise you.
Good.
I'm going to hold you to that because I've been pretty bored.
Now, losing 50 to 3 isn't necessarily boring either. So, that's that promise might not go as far as it sounds. It's like we can lose in such spectacular fashion that you're at least entertained. That's not what he's saying. But and I mean, like, I do think, based on like we heard from Foster Morrow, I think this team should be fired up, right? This team should, I don't know. I think they're bought in. Like, I don't think this is a team that's just kind of quit. Like, they're not going to just phone it in. Like, there's a lot of veterans in there. I don't think they're going to get traded. They don't have any interest in kind of going quietly into the night. So you'll see a team fighting. And I believe him when he says that. I just don't know how.
Sorry, but some of the biggest things I've heard from, like, Abear and Deuce as players, obviously, they're like, you're still playing for a job, whether it's here or someone else. The eye in the sky never lies, the tape, and you can't be putting terrible footage of you not trying out on the football field. What team's going to want to bring you in if it's not New Orleans?
Yeah, like that's like players just don't go out there and be like, I'm going to play bad.
We're not going anywhere this year. Why am I even trying?
Right. Like, these guys want to go sign a contract, right? They don't want to get cut. Most NFL contracts are not guaranteed. Like, only a handful of them have. A handful might not be accurate, but like only a handful of players on any given roster have legitimate guaranteed money in their contracts. And those are like the quarterbacks, the star receiver, the star DB, maybe a linebacker, maybe a defensive end. Like, a majority of these players are, especially on the Saints right now, on 1-year deals, kind of vet minimum deals. Like, you need to not only prove that like that was worth it, but you need to put tape out there that, teams are going to look at and be like, well, okay, we want to bring this guy in if it's not the Saints. So, like, they're going to go out there and going to play. Yeah. Are they talented enough? I was talking to, I can't remember. It might have been Mike Triplett. And he was just like, the Saints are going to win this week because that's what happens when you go to an interim head coach. Everyone comes out, they play harder. But like, I don't care how much motivation you come out with. You're not going to have any wide receivers, right? Like, Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Cedric Wilson and Mason Tipton are not suddenly going to be elite star wide receivers for you. So I don't know. Do you have the talent level necessary to win? That I'm not sure about. Oh,
well,
also,
Alvin just needs 400 yards a game. That's it.
Well, 200 isn't enough.
Right. Exactly.
One thing that's been driving me nuts is it's like every time Derek throws to Mason Tipton, it's like the first time they've ever thrown a ball to each other. I don't get it. It's so strange. They've been working together since training camp, and it's like he doesn't know how fast he can run, or like, maybe he does think he knows how fast he can run, but then Mason kind of doesn't run as fast in the game. And I think that was my critique when I watched this film as a UDFA coming out of Yale, is like, he's very, very fast, but he doesn't always play fast. And it seems like every time that there's a chance to get him the ball, it's like throwing like 3 yards, 5 yards too far. And it's like I know he's fast. And maybe, I don't know, maybe he's throwing like when you throw to Rashid, you can't overthrow him. It's impossible because he can outrun the ball. I just like, it's such a weird thing. They cannot hook up. They just cannot get that timing down for whatever reason. And it's infuriating because I think Mason is good. I think he's capable of making plays. They just can't
not
figure it out.
On fourth down, though.
Yeah, not just think about that. If it was on third down, I'd have been like, great, but it was like third and 17, 3rd and 16. So you couldn't do that on third down because then you would have been 4th and 16 if it didn't work out. And then it's like, if that's Rashid, if that's Olave, maybe I feel differently about it. But you're throwing to Cedric Wilson. And the thing is, like, it wasn't a bad throw. Like, I don't like the decision, but you go back and watch the throw. It's right there. He could have made that catch. He did it. Now, you could argue that the defensive player played that identically to how Demario Davis played the pass interference to Jashavian Sanders, like the drive before that, and it got flagged there, and it didn't get flagged there. And it's like, part of the reason is because it's fourth down. The refs don't want to impact the game in that way. So they're going to, it's close. It's close. That was like, if you're going to call, and that game wasn't about the refs, but if you're going to call one, call the other. Like that's bull. Like they did the same thing. If you're going to flag a guy for kind of running through a receiver and not getting your head around, you got to flag it. Or you don't.
I definitely wasn't a fan of the call on Demario.
No, like neither of those should get called. That's my
Yeah.
point. Like I don't think they should have called the one on the TV outside, but you just called the same thing on Demario. Is it because he's a linebacker? Is it because he's bigger? Anyway.
Yeah, lots of, memorable moments from DA's last appearance as the head coach of the Saints. We mentioned the fact that there was just an historically awful loss, and you just, that Scorigami site that tweets out different scores that have never happened. I feel like this was definitely one of those losses we haven't seen before, and it was legit.
It was. Yeah. The stat was like, if teams that have outgained the opponent by 150 plus, rushed for 150 plus yards, and won the turnover battle, were like 250
275 and 0 until now.
Was it 275? That was
275. So now 275 and 1
over the last 20 years. So I mean, maybe it happened in like the 80s. I don't know. But I don't. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Okay, let's go to break. We'll come back and we'll do a mailbag. We've just been kind of rambling, and normally I try to be more composed in terms of what we're talking about than this, but this is a rambling kind of day. It started at like 8 a.m. Like I was trying to drink a cup of coffee, and then all of a sudden I'm like, God damn it.
Right, the coffee cup drops like, oh shit.
Well, like because like last week they didn't announce the press conference until like later in the morning than they normally do. I'm like, oh no, is it happening? Did it happen? And then they like at like 9:30 they were like, all right, 1:15 like normal. And I was like, so this morning I was like, burn me once,
Right.
Anyway, but this is Inside Black and Gold. This is our rambling edition, a rambling wreck of a podcast. Thanks everyone for hanging out. I've had a lot of people in here, a lot of comments, so I'm going to go through star as many as I can, and we will get to a bunch in the final segment. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. Stick around. All right. And we're back inside Black and Gold. Got through as many of these comments as I could. This is one of my favorite games to play in the NFL is CMB 300. And he underthrew it. One of my favorite games to play in the NFL is hearing people complain about back shoulder throws as if like that's not a thing. Like, wow, why didn't he throw it right out in front of him? When it's like back shoulder fades is like, that's how it works. Like it's either you don't see a lot of balls thrown 60 yards to someone.
So I assume this is complaining about the fourth down.
Yeah. It's just funny. Like it was like that was actually a good back shoulder throw. The issue was honestly not like the issue. I don't like the decision. I think he should have tried to fit it in, float it over the kind of linebacker to Juwan Johnson on an option route in the middle where there was space. It's a tougher throw. The problem is he loves to overthrow guys in the middle of the field. And if you remember the Eagles game, it was a similar throw that he kind of, he threw it early. It was a different situation because he was about to get hit. So he kind of threw to Rashid early. But like, I think when you throw an interception in the middle of the field in that situation once, maybe you're a little hesitant to go back to it there. I think he probably should have tried to float it to Juwan. Big tight end in the middle of the field is your best pass catcher on the field.
I was going to say, you know what? You needed Jimmy Graham in that situation.
I think you had Juwan Johnson there, and like you give him a chance. He had made a nice catch earlier on that drive on a ball that he kind of plucked. Like he was making some nice hands catches in that game. Foster had a nice hands catch in that game. And so it's like, but at the end of the day, like the throw he made, while I don't like the decision, like go back and look at the throw. It's a good throw. Like if that is a starting wide receiver, right? I expect him to go up and make that play. Cedric Wilson, a guy dealing with a shoulder injury already that he went back to the locker room, got x-rays for. It's not a guy I expect to make that play. It's no disrespect to Cedric. It's just you want to go to your stars in those situations, and the Saints didn't have any stars at wide receiver, so I want to try to extend the drive. I don't want to gamble on my wide receiver 3 dealing with a shoulder injury going up the ball. Either way, it was a well-placed kind of back shoulder ball, deep ball down the field. Just didn't come up with it. But I love it. Like it's like there has never been a back shoulder throw. It's always just he meant to throw it 20 yards further down the field than he did. It was funny because it was his only deep ball of the game. I was starting to wonder if he could throw it. And I still don't believe that he necessarily can.
Right. No, it definitely doesn't seem like he can push the ball right now.
Yeah, like he said he was 100% going into the game or like close to 100, as close as he could be to 100%. You remember it was a while ago, it was like 6 or 7 years ago in New Orleans, the Sewage and Water Board, where like they told everyone they had 100% capacity. And then they got questioned by the city council. And they're like, well, we meant 100% of the maximum capacity available, which is actually like 70%.
Right. Oh.
And they were just like, what? You said 100. And they were like, well, we capped out at 70. So we were 100% of the 70% that we could be. And that's kind of how I think the Derek Carr health situation is right now. Like he is as 100% as he can be. But he's just there that whatever 100% is has been like carved down to a certain level.
We'll see what happens now for Atlanta Hate Week.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, he's gonna have the job. Like again, I think we talked about this. Darren Rizzi had a chance to be like, "Hey, we're gonna figure it out. We're not gonna commit to him." He pretty much committed to Derek for at least a week. Now, does that change? Does it come down from on high that we want to get a look at the young guy? Because
right,
you can talk about an interim coach, and you're going to give him the ability to make his decisions. But at the end of the day, if the front office wants to see a player in there, the interim coach is not going to have much ground to be like, nah, we're not.
Who knows? Miss Gayle might be part of the Rattler pit.
Maybe she's going like,
right.
Hey, Darren.
Sit. No, but seriously,
you know, she like hangs out in the hallways and gives the players hugs on their way out. like she'll give Darren a hug and be like, You heard me. Oh, yeah.
No, but with the Saints, I wouldn't expect them though to make any kind of move away from Carr. I even think if you're in tank mode, you don't necessarily need to even go about and sit him because
Hey,
the offense still
you're
looks.
doing a
Who's he
fine job.
throwing to besides Alvin?
You're doing a fine job losing with him in there.
Right,
Why?
exactly. Go right ahead.
Why mess with success?
He's going to mess around and have 4 touchdown game.
Yeah. Well, like we are probably, it's funny. It's so easy to complain about the quarterback. The quarterback wasn't the guy holding on those, like you had back-to-back holding penalties on a drive that could have put away the game. Then the next drive, after you forced a punt, you had a face mask penalty on first down.
Right.
So like you ended up with a 1st and 29 and a 1st and 23 on 2 possessions that should have been an opportunity to end the game. So it's like, yeah, I'd love to see the quarterback convert there. He came within a half yard of converting, and then the most cowardly punt I've seen in a while occurred. But anyway, we promised this would be a mailbag, so we should do a mailbag. Ransom Antoine says, I was so conflicted. I wanted to win, but wanted us to lose to get this regime over with. Yeah, I mean, like,
I get it.
It's, in the moment, you're like, I can't believe you lost to the Panthers. And afterwards, you're like,
Huh.
Thanks. We needed that.
Yeah.
Like, it had to happen. And whether it was this week, whether it was 3 weeks from now in the bye, which personally, I'm a little selfish. Like, in my head, I was like, they're going to drag this out until the bye. And then the bye week, which is like the week that, the NFL kind of stops being like the entirety of my existence. I'm like dealing with a coach firing. So like, hey, now I get a bye week, right? I can travel. But no, I mean, like that was the Panthers did the Saints a favor, in my opinion, because I don't think the Panthers even really wanted to win that game. But when you deal with teams like that, when you deal with teams that I think are kind of passively tanking, the only way they win a game is if you let them hang around and it's within a possession, and then you fall flat on your face in that moment. And that's what happened. Like, I didn't feel like the Panthers were really doing anything offensively that until that pass interference, I kind of felt like they were just going to be like, yeah, whatever.
Some big old rookie undrafted tight end was a nuisance.
Jatavian Sanders? Not undrafted tight end. What are you talking about?
I thought he was undrafted.
No, he was like the 3rd rated. Like he's a good tight end. Like the issue was not that they didn't have a talented tight end. The issue was that you couldn't stop him. But no, he was out of Texas. He's a 4th round pick.
Okay.
No, he's a legit tight end. He's a good player. He's not as good as the Saints made him look. But honestly, like the only reason they held him to what I think he had like 4 catches or whatever. He had like a 46-yard catch and run where he hurdled a guy. Like they just stopped throwing to him for some reason. I don't know why. Like they could have thrown to him all day. Ugo Amadi wasn't covering him, and they just kind of let him do whatever he wanted. But and that's why I think like the Panthers, I don't even think they really wanted to win that game because they should have just been peppering that guy with targets until the Saints proved they could stop him, and they didn't. This tier 1 solutions 28 says you were told and you attacked those of us who told you. Why? And I'm like, no, I called you a troll for being a troll. If you're going to be a troll, I'm going to tell you you're a troll.
What were they trolling? The firing of Allen?
No, like there's a certain like people have been complaining that they should have been firing the coach since like week 3 of the 2022 season. Like it's like you're going to let it play out. And I say that to people and they think, "Oh, you're attacking us for our opinions." Like, no, I just think you're dumb. Who you guys think we should target as the new head coach? That's a conversation I am not prepared to have yet, to be completely honest. And it's not because like I don't think they're going to hire a new head coach. It's just because it's tough to know until you kind of see the coach, like until you see the opportunities available, the jobs available, and how the kind of coaching cycle exists. It's tough. If I had to pick one right now, I'd probably say Vrabel, just because I think this this team is in need of kind of like a cultural shift, like you need a strong personality, in my opinion, and he's that. But things didn't go well for him late with the Titans, so who knows? Do you have a pick?
Yeah, I'm definitely not in the whole camp of bringing Gruden, bring in Bill Belichick, any of those big names. It just doesn't appeal to me. I'm not quite sure yet either.
Yeah, I'm not. I have no
of,
interest in
a
getting.
lot of folks have been mentioning, the Lions offensive coordinator, and I'm like, I don't know if he's really that proven.
Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby Slowick's another guy here a lot.
Right.
There's always going to be the offensive coordinators, but if you were interested in going with a hotshot offensive coordinator, why not just promote Clint? Like he was the big name, and now we've all kind of ignored him. But like that would be the same to me as something like that. And I don't know, like I'd like to think that if Darren turned this thing around, that you would consider him, because I hate the idea of like, yeah, we go to an interim, we're not even giving him an honest chance at this job.
Yeah, I think if you see some kind of turnaround like the Raiders felt with last year, and you saw that team really playing hard, I don't know. I think you could sway them to at least go, hey, we're going to take another year look with Riz leading the way with a full year under his belt. I don't know.
Yeah, but the Raiders also didn't do that with Rick Bisaccia when he led them to the postseason. So
that's true. Right.
It's tough. It's tough. Yeah. And I kind of feel like they hired Antonio Pierce because they didn't do that with Rick Bisaccia. And then they ended up with Josh McDaniels, and that was an unmitigated disaster. So they're like, this time we'll go with Antonio Pierce. And I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going particularly well.
That's what happens when you don't have the signal caller anywhere.
Maybe they'll trade for Derek Carr. Hey, Antonio, he looks good in that uniform. We've seen it.
I was just happy this week that Jameis Winston came back to earth, and there was the Jameis Winston hive is not as loud this week.
I was not able to keep up with a lot of the games. What happened in that game? Did they lose to who?
Cleveland ended up losing. Who the heck did they play? Shoot.
Eagles.
Yes. No. They hosted the Chargers.
Oh, yeah, they got beat bad. Yeah. Which I don't know. Chargers are what, 5-3 now? Yeah.
Yeah.
The funniest division in the NFL, and this is kind of off topic, is the NFC West, because it's 5-4, 4-4, 4-4, 4-5.
Well, I just want to throw out there too, just because I'm not the Jameis Winston, biggest fan. So he had a 3-pick day, and everybody suddenly doesn't love all those pregame speeches anymore.
Weird how that works, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Ricky B says DA was trying to ruin Rattler. I disagree with that. I think DA
was hoping it could inject something to save him, right?
DA was hoping Rattler could save his job.
Yes.
That's what was going on. Because he knew it's like Haener is not, like Haener probably gave you a better chance to win, but the excitement around Rattler could have.
But if I go with Rattler too, maybe those fans will like me again.
It did not go well. It did not work the way he hoped, and it kind of all kind of unraveled. I love these. Esh Lavinia with Kenneth White. Bring in Drew Brees or Phillip Rivers as quarterbacks coach. What? I don't know why people think like these retired quarterbacks are just dying to come back as quarterbacks.
Well, I think Phillip Rivers is doing high school football, but that's because I think he's got kiddos obviously doing it. So that's why he's into it. And Drew said before too, unless I'm doing stuff with my kids, I'm not getting into in any kind of coaching gig. He knows what life is like for those guys, obviously.
Yeah, people underestimate how like
miserable
the hours that go into that, and like how thankless of a job it really is. And plus, like, can you imagine if Drew Brees was on the sideline as a quarterback's coach? No one would ever stop talking about it. Like, it would be this massive media. It just would not work out. And he doesn't want to do it either. So I just think it's funny. Like everyone talks, like people say that, like, bring in Drew Brees, as if like he's sitting there waiting for the call. like no. The Saints would, I'm sure, jump at the opportunity to get Drew Brees in their coaching staff. Right? They want Deuce on their coaching staff. He's not interested in it,
Right. I just loved one time Ricky Jackson was asked, about getting into coaching, and he even said, "Oh no, I like my life." He's like, next week he mentioned too. He's like, "I'm going golfing with Michael Jordan," and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty nice, Ricky."
Well, right. Like, I think Deuce would be a great coach. He doesn't want to do it. He wants to call the games. It's a much much cushier gig.
He
And
knows
you
bye
get
bye to the
yelled at a
family
lot
for
less.
sure.
Yeah. You don't get fired when things don't go well. like Deuce is going to be around a lot longer than the coaching staff.
You know it, right?
Ronnie Davis says, "I like Riz to hold down the fort temporarily. Fiery, passionate coach. We got the guy who told Arthur Smith and the Falcons, F you, not I'm sorry at the end of the game." Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. I mean, there was a time in Kansas City, I legitimately thought he was going to throw a punch at one of Isaiah Stalbert or Isaiah Foskey. One of the Isaiahs. I don't even know if he knew which Isaiah he was mad at. He was like, if like Cam Jordan and Alontae Taylor had to lead him away from the Isaiahs. I don't know what they did. I think there was a penalty, maybe a hold. He was really
Livid.
shit pissed. Like I don't know if I've ever been that angry in my life. Like I yell a lot. I don't actually get angry. I just talk. Like his eyes. Oh my God. He's gonna hurt someone. And that's like, and I don't know, maybe that's not a good thing, but like you're talking about a fiery guy. He's a fiery guy. And like Sean was a fiery guy too. Like I'm sure, like I think Riz was the one who told us, like, yeah, on game days, you watch Sean, there's this halo around him. There's like a 3-foot halo all around him at all times. Because everyone knows if they step within that, they're in firing range. Like you don't want to be there. And now it might not go against you, but if something bad happens and you're within that radius, you might get fired just for being there. Yeah, I could see Riz kind of developing into that too, but I don't know. He's also not an off. I also feel like when you're not calling plays on offense, it's a lot easier to stay kind of calm because you're not also like that should have worked. You messed up. I didn't mess up. That was the right call. You didn't run it right. He just kind of go over to Clinton and be like, "What the hell was that?" And
I'm so curious now too. Which Isaiah is at fault?
Yeah, it was funny that it was both Isaiahs. DA pop out and get kicked out the boot state. Yeah, that. Remember when we were all so excited about this team?
I don't recall.
Like a different universe.
Yeah, how the hell did we jump into this one? Because everything. How did we jump into this one? Because the start of September was awesome.
Can we have like an Across the Spider-Verse moment in this same season, or we could just like go to that dimension where things like Eric McCoy doesn't get hurt in week 3 and you beat the Eagles and the vibes? Because like I genuinely believe if you won that game against the Eagles, that things would have felt different, and like once like it's a slippery slope. Once that confidence goes away, particularly if you don't have a strong head coach, and who knows if that would have lasted beyond this season. But I do think there's a scenario where, the injuries don't pile up and you win a few games early in the season. You're not completely down on yourself here. And like, this is a game to go to 5-3 instead of 2-7 or whatever, 5-4. But we don't live in that universe. So
the what ifs, right? Man, I'm having terrible luck. My Eagles kind of did this last year, man. Well, they did at the end of the year, though. They didn't start out.
Well, they started out like 10-1.
Yeah, and then it was like,
it's a little different. But yeah, no, it's once it gets away, once it starts to snowball, it's really hard to pull it back. Like you need, that's where like the quality of your head coach is really tested, in my opinion. Like, because like when the things start going and going and going and you can't pull it back, it gets away from you, the locker room fractures and you lose an entire season. And I mean, that's kind of what happened to the Saints during that 7-9 stretch. But they kind of trusted Sean to pull it back and he eventually did. Now having a Drew Brees helps.
That was when there was no defense.
Milton Borrell says nobody is celebrating. I hope a change was needed, and I think it's kind of low class to celebrate a guy getting fired. but you're kidding yourself. You don't think people are excited. They've been asking for this since week 1 of 2022. Let's be real.
This is the closest thing to some Saints fans as Victory Monday as we've had in ages.
They've been asking for this since like the first 3 quarters of that game against the Falcons that the Saints won. Remember that? The Dennis Allen era had some wild games, man. Like, you got to give him credit. There was some bizarre games. Like, they were down, 24 to, like, they had like a 24-point comeback in the first game against the Falcons. They blew a 17-0 lead in the fourth quarter against the Packers. They blew like a 16-3 lead late in the fourth quarter against the Bucs. A man after my own heart. They had 2 of the biggest blowout wins. They were like on the verge of setting NFL records for points scored over the first 2 weeks of this season. Like, this tenure was bonkers from start to finish.
Yeah, the roller coaster had too many lows, though. Unfortunately, there were a few peaks, though.
Big Mill says, "Hey, Foster from LSU, watch your mouth." I don't know what he's talking about. You know what he's talking about?
No.
I said he was from LSU.
Yeah, I don't think you said anything bad about him either.
No, I don't think so either.
The bad thing you mentioned, right now in the Tankiverse, whatever it's called, you see the Saints have the 3rd overall pick in the NFL draft, and even if that maintains, who the heck you taking at quarterback this year?
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, that's why, I think you're probably in for another year of Derek Carr, no matter who you bring in. Now maybe Spencer, you feel like he develops enough, and you go with him. But yeah, I don't see the quarterback in this draft.
That's all right. Grab an O-lineman, I guess. Who knows?
You would be better off. Maybe if someone wants to trade up, you go down and collect some assets. Like, I think you need to rebuild. You need to restock the cupboard.
Big
in a
time.
lot of positions. And, okay, if you fall in love with the quarterback, great. Like, if you hire a head coach and this guy's like, that's my guy, sure, fine, go after him. If that's
hire Dion,
Carson Beck, or if that's Shadur Sanders or whatever. If you just want to sell tickets, go after Shadur Sanders, and because there will be entertainment value there. Like, Rizzi's like, hey, we promise not to be boring. So will Shadur and Dion.
That's when you bring in Coach Prime. You really piss off Atlanta.
Now that would be a thing. God, I can't even covering that would be a friggin' you say anything critical of him and he's going to call you out in a press conference. A Camp says Bobby Slowick and Arch Manning build up the offensive line, get some weapons in the draft, tank next season again, and go get Arch Manning. You need generational talent again. So the suggestion there is that not only do you want to lose this year, you want to go into next year and actively try to lose as much as possible.
So we're following the Panthers model.
No, because they did it by accident. They didn't try. When you trade away,
just keep getting that number 1 pick.
When you trade away your future number 1 overall pick, you're not tanking. That's not the goal. That's just it reminds me of when the Celtics traded with the Nets, and the Celtics went to the NBA Finals or the Eastern Conference Finals. I think it was the NBA Finals, and then picked number 1 on the draft. Oh no! They went to the Eastern Conference Finals, then got the number 1 overall pick from the Nets with a pick swap, and then traded that pick for Markelle Fultz, or they traded that pick to the Sixers, who went and drafted Markelle Fultz, and then they picked Jason Tatum at number 3. So they not only did that. So that's kind of how I feel like the Bears
chess move right there, right?
Yeah, that's what the Bears did to the Panthers. That's my point. Either way, I wouldn't hate going to get Arch Manning. I just don't think teams don't go into a season saying, "What if we lose all our games? How can we pull that off? How can we get this? How can we make this happen?"
Imagine we could have another Manning. Well, this is what we need to do.
I would love me a Manning. I'm not gonna lie about that. From Archie to Arch, 1970 to 2026, it would be the first time since Archie Manning that they took a first-round quarterback.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The script writers are hard at work.
This person whose YouTube channel is No has been in here for the entire time saying stuff like, Dennis Allen is the best coach the Saints have ever had. And I hope DA doesn't ask Sean Payton for anything. I hope he realized that Sean Payton got DA fired. Sean Payton is the reason Dennis Allen was a head coach. I'm just fascinated at who this person is and whether
Sean Payton might end up hiring Dennis. We don't know. I'm not saying that the coordinator, but maybe in some role there. Who knows?
These comments are honestly wild. Dennis Allen inspired players that wanted to be in the league. Sean Payton created the players' mess, and DA was the fall guy. I mean, Darren Rizzi is a passionate coach, but he is not better than Dennis Allen as a head coach. Y'all, Dennis Allen and Derek Carr haters are annoying and wrong. Derek Carr plays like all pro. Alvin Kamara lost us that game yesterday because he is a greedy Dennis Allen hater. This is wild. Oh man. I just want to know who it is.
This was from the AP. Dennis Allen's 327 career win percentage ranks 147th out of 149 coaches with 75 plus games.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kyle DeVille, no way Mickey goes into acquire future asset mode. He's not wired that way. Same old kick the can mentality to follow. I mean, I don't know. I kind of agree in the asset acquisition part of it. But I do think that you've seen them manage the cap differently this year. It doesn't seem like they're, like I think, and previously you could say like, hey, they're on the fringe, right? You went 9-8. Like it's not unreasonable to say, hey, let's see if we can continue that trajectory. Now, it's not happening anymore.
Sell it all, baby.
I do think that you're gonna see things change. And the biggest question to me, and we can wrap this up. We've been on here forever. The biggest question to me is, do you make more changes? Do those changes filter up to the front office? And Mickey's I almost said DA's never getting fired. He did get fired. Mickey's never getting fired. Like, you're never going to see a headline, Saints fire Mickey Loomis. It's
Mickey has moved into another role with the team.
Yes. You will see Mickey is transitioning into a supervisory role alongside Dennis Lauscha or something.
Super top secret access he has or something, right?
Yeah, and someone else is in charge fully of player personnel decisions. That's what will happen when it does happen. But does that happen this year? And I think you're getting closer to that, because I can't remember if we talked about this earlier, but like that statement from Mickey, you put Gayle's comment next to Mickey's comment, and it sure seemed like they were at odds with each other. Like, it sure seemed like, and I'll just read this.
Yeah.
So this is the press conference they set out. And so Gayle's comment, Dennis has been part of our organization for many years. He is highly regarded within the NFL. He has been extremely loyal and professional, and most importantly, an excellent football coach for us. All of this makes today a very tough for me and our organization. However, this decision is something that I felt we needed to make at this time. I wish nothing but the best in the future for Dennis and his family. He will always be considered in the highest regard by me and everyone within our organization. Smash cut. Dennis Allen's comment right below. I'm sorry. Mickey Loomis's comment right below this. DA is an excellent football coach. This season, we have had an avalanche of injuries. It took its toll. DA has never offered excuses. He fought each day for this organization and this team, and that is what makes today disappointing. Dennis has been an integral part of this organization's success for the better part of 20 years. He will be missed. You hear that, right? Like, this was not a Mickey Loomis call based on this. This was Gayle stepping in and saying, time for a change.
Enough's
Even the
enough.
way it's worded says, she writes, or she didn't write this. Let's be real. She didn't write this. But the way this is written says, this decision is something that I felt we needed. The owner, I felt we needed. Mickey's statement is someone saying, I don't think this is necessarily fair because of the injuries. It didn't say, hey, it's about results. It's about this. So I don't know. I think people.
No,
People get
we
mad
already
at
know
Gayle.
Mickey's more than results. Remember?
Right. Well, and people want to get mad at Gayle for not being involved and not doing this and not doing that. Well, I think that's what happened here, to at least to some degree, at least to a more extensive degree than would typically be Gayle Benson's involvement in these types of decisions. So call that what you want. I'm just going back, like I'm just connecting dots here.
Yeah, I think from that, to me, it's like obvious. It seems like Loomis feels bad. Obviously, DA probably has a good friendship with him, and just the scenario of the injuries and just depleting the team wasn't in a no-win situation, and sadly had to get rid of someone he considers a friend. I'm just guessing here. And, obviously it's business though. So nothing personal. This is just a business move that had to be done.
Mickey doesn't want to fire coaches midseason. I get it. I understand it. And I
Right.
think that's a big part of it. Like there's a reason they don't do that. But I think you've reached a point where that had to change.
It was also a little weird too. I know you know this. Obviously, the only person to speak to the players was just Darren Rizzi. They didn't hear from anybody else.
Yeah. No, and so it makes you ask questions. It makes you wonder, what's the fallout from this going to be? Because I think it's going to be more than just, hey, we lose a head coach here, or we move on, we change head coaches. I think there's going to be more than that, and we'll see. But yeah, like that's why when you say I don't think Mickey's going to shift into acquire assets mode, is he the only one calling the shots these days? We'll see. Big Mill says hire Jim Mora, no more excuses. Sold. What is he? 75 now? 80?
I was going to say, do you want senior or junior?
That's a good question. How old is Jim Mora senior? He's got to be close to 80.
Got to be, right.
He's 89? Holy crap. Dude looks good for 89.
Yeah.
89? 89?
Termites. The commercial on WWL.
Termites?
Right.
89? Oh, man. What an icon of like shrill voiced people. Like, man.
I just think it's funny too. Like, Abe, you talk to Bobby, he'll tell you some great stories of just him and Moore getting into it. But in the end, they're still good friends.
Yeah, Jim was a hard ass,
right?
And like that's why when people say, "Hey, DA's a nice guy," but like that's the but. Like, I think some of the best coaches in NFL history were not nice guys.
They're the asshole, right? You need the asshole.
You need that. Not all the time, but it's got to exist.
Like Tony Dungy's an example. I think he's not the asshole.
Yeah, I couldn't say that I'm familiar enough with Tony to say high or low, but I mean, like I think if you went around and you looked at some of some of these coaches that have had a long tenure with like Mike Tomlin, kind of a dick, right? Like Mike Tomlin's not a nice guy, but he's liked in his organization, and that's what's important. He's been there forever. I don't think he's ever gonna get fired. I think the Harbaughs might be an example of like, I think they like, I don't, John Harbaugh doesn't strike me as like an angry guy. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he is behind the scenes. It's just, I don't know. Jim Harbaugh kind of seems like a jerk.
How about like a Pete Carroll? I don't know if
Bill Belichick's definitely not a nice man.
Who's that?
Bill Belichick. Although he's a lot funnier than I realized. Like he's got a sense of humor that I did not know existed.
Hey man, the secret's he's fishing up mermaids on the beach on Halloween. 24-year-old girlfriend.
I saw that.
Good for
he's
Bill.
having a grand old time.
Good for Bill.
He's living his best life.
Still winning
on every TV show. Hanging out with the Mannings.
Oh, hanging out with what's his name too? McAfee.
Yeah. He and Saban are like competing to see who can surprise people the most.
We'll get him on here one day.
Oh yeah. He's right over here. You want me to have him come on?
Stop by. He wants to see Bailey, right?
All right. Speaking of Bailey, if I don't walk her soon, she might bite me. So we're going to wrap this up. We've been on here for a long time. If we're ever going to do a 2-hour podcast, this was going to be it. So glad we got this done. Thanks everyone who hung out. We've had over 130, 140, 150 people in here the entire time. Got over 200 there for a spell. So that's really good. That's cool. Appreciate y'all. Love seeing y'all in here. Appreciate y'all's comments. Even the no character who is like a DA burner account. It's always fun, and we'll continue. We'll keep talking about. I don't know. I think we might have to switch up our methodology for these podcasts. If once you lose a couple more games, talking about like the matchups in the game kind of starts to feel meaningless.
Who fucking cares, right?
But we gotta do something. So we'll find out. I want to talk more about what the players had to say in the next episode. So we'll probably do that on Wednesday. We'll break down the injury report. But
I'm going to start reading everything NFL draft related, Jeff.
Right. But until then, let's wrap it up. Who dat? Go Saints. It's Darren Rizzi time, y'all.
Take care, Who Dats.
Enjoy it.